Hi, I'm Richard Randall, and welcome to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker, the owner of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. This is the weekly radio show that informs and educates you on how to buy or sell real estate with Colorado's Real Estate Authority, Barb Schlinker. Barb Schlinker is a retired Navy veteran. Barb is an author, and Barb Schlinker is also a pilot. Barb and her team enjoy all that Colorado and the Front Range have to offer. Barb, always great to be talking with you. Now, we air Your Real Estate Voice every Saturday. If you can't listen to the entire show, it is always available on Barb's site, barbhasthebuyers.com, or just go ahead and search for Barb. You'll find her on almost all of the popular podcast platforms like iHeartRadio. Every week, Your Real Estate Voice covers great information about the housing market and one of the average person's largest assets, their home. Barb, what are we covering today?
Well, Richard, right now we're going into the fall season, so there's not as many buyers out. I would say a majority of the sales do take place. Well, we sell every month, so let me put that in perspective. I had two sales yesterday, so it happens every month. However, it's not as robust as, say, the summer and spring months. So if you're a home seller right now, how do you sell your house when there's fewer buyers to choose from here in Colorado? And then the next topic we're going to cover is what increases home value when you're selling a house. A lot of people make some unusual assumptions about that. Things like, well, doesn't my tankless water heater increase the value? No, not really. You know, it's a nice to have thing for the buyer. Same with solar panels, believe it or not. It's kind of a controversial topic because, it's supposed to be something that might help the environment a little bit. However, the cost of solar typically runs anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 to put on your house. And then you have to do the math. If your electric bill is, say, 100 a month, how many months would it take for that to pay off? The interesting thing, though, is that having a solar system doesn't necessarily make the buyer pay more money for the house. It's sort of a, oh, that's nice kind of thing. So I would not do that if you're planning to sell a home because it will not increase the value. But we'll go over some different things that actually can increase your home's value. The third topic is going to be about what do you do if you want to buy a home, but you have to sell a home first? It's the number one dilemma that many, many home buyers run into. Some have already solved the problem by having a paid for house. They could go buy their next home first without any problem. But if they need to take their equity out in order to buy their next home, we've got some new and exciting things that I want to share with you on how you can do that at very low cost. And then the last topic, also very controversial, is whether or not a buyer really needs a real estate agent to buy a house. And as always, I love talking about my hot new listings. Richard?
Barb, with the rates being as high as they are right now, there are fewer buyers that can afford a home right now. How do you sell a home with fewer buyers to choose from?
Well, Richard, it's interesting. On the way to record the show, I was listening to that very discussion on the radio. The problem is that the rates are higher than what we've seen right after the meltdown. All that was kind of artificial, and it was left by the Fed for about 10 years after the meltdown. So they drove the interest rates down to almost zero. I talk to a lot of people every week that say they have a 30-year fixed mortgage at 2.5 or 2.75%, which is amazing, but you can't get that now. And the possibility of that happening in the near future probably are very low likelihood. And what's interesting to me is when the Fed alters the rates, like they did this past week, where they dropped the rates a quarter point. And at the time, the 30-year conventional rate was sitting at 6.1. I thought, oh, we're making progress here. We're getting down from where we were before at 7.5 last year. Now we're down to 6.1. The Fed dropped it another corner. The Fed dropped it another quarter percent. And what do you think happened? The mortgage rates went back up. to 6.3. So I don't know why that happened. Maybe they priced in that they were expecting a half a point rate, or maybe it's just comparing apples to oranges. The Fed rate doesn't always translate to what the mortgage rates are going to do. Those are more focused on the 5 and 10-year bond. So what we're seeing right now is that the rates are kind of hovering along. But the biggest dilemma for home buyers at this time is that the prices are still high. They can't afford these payments, even though the rates aren't that bad. I actually did some research and kind of went way back in time, kind of zoomed out to see where were interest rates back. I remember I think I bought my first house when we were just coming off the 18% interest rates during, I think, the Carter administration around that time. And then they dropped down to maybe 12%. And I think the house that I bought was like 110,000 in California. Of course, you can't touch that now for that price, but I had to buy down the interest rate to make it affordable for me. And so those programs are still out there now. So if it's a payment issue, I encourage buyers to go out there and get with a good qualified mortgage broker, not one of these 2-week wonders, because just so you know, it's only 2 weeks of school to become a mortgage broker. So how much do they really know? You really want to talk to somebody that has expertise and programs that can help you think through and plan out what is that payment and what is that price point that makes it affordable for you to be a homeowner. Because the benefits of home ownership go wide and long. When you think about it, when you buy a house, even if you get a 30-year mortgage, your payment is essentially locked in, with the exception of property taxes and homeowners insurance. Those two things could go up, and they have been going up lately. But in general, you're not going to face something like the mortgage payment going up substantially. It gets fixed for 30 years and then it's paid off. As opposed to if you rented a home, chances of the rent going up are very high year after year after year. And you don't get any benefit to that. You're not buying down your mortgage. You're not increasing your equity position in that home. So it's always better to be a home buyer versus not. However, it's all about, can you afford the payment? So if you listen to different gurus, some of them say, oh, you should have a payment that's about 25% of your take-home pay. That would be great. I think it's hard to do these days. But generally the lenders will qualify you up to 30, maybe 40%. I talked to somebody yesterday that told me he thought rent was fairly equal as to what he thought he was going to pay in a mortgage right now. But if you zoom out and look at rates as they are now, as compared to what they were years ago, they're very, very similar to what they were in the early 2000s. And the market was red hot at the time. The difference was the prices were actually a lot lower. So if you pull up data and see what's going on right now, it's kind of a mixed bag. Like if you look at the median list price, just since June, it's dropped $20,000. Even the new listings have dropped even more than that. The other thing that I'm looking at really hard is, what is the trend? Like the days on market is marching longer and longer. Now it's up to 91 days is the average time from the time a house goes on the market to the time that the seller gets a contract. Now, that's still a pretty balanced market in the scheme of things. If you start going over 6 months days on the market, then we've got a problem. So what has changed from 2 years ago? 2 years ago, we had half as much available homes on the market as we do now. So we have more inventory, more choices for buyer. The sellers are competing for the same amount of buyers essentially that are buying homes as they were 2 years ago. So that's why we're seeing a little bit of softness in the market. But the weirdest thing about it, I look back on, I was doing this topic a while ago. It was 2 years ago. And I looked back at the average prices back then, August of 2023, that was about 554. If you look at what the average prices are now, they're about 554 then and 566 now. So the prices have gone up but the buyer demand has gone down. So something probably will give. I would not be surprised to see prices correct a little bit going into the fall and the winter. Even Fred, which is basically Freddie Mac, came out with some data that really indicated, going all the way back to 2017, that the number of available homes has surged. Now we're seeing mixed information from some of the experts, like Stansberry Research says, oh, don't worry, the housing market won't crash. Sellers are not really under pressure to sell because they're not facing foreclosure. They have equity, they have low interest rate loans, but they do expect what they call the calm before the storm, meaning we might have some changes in the market. And it's all about mortgage rates. And right now they're okay. They're at 6%. If you're a buyer in this market and you don't want to have to compete, I would be looking at buying now and not waiting. Everybody's predicting that the Fed and perhaps the interest rates could drop by 1% this time next year. That would be great. But if that happens, we could have bidding wars. The other dilemma is that builders are offering massive incentives. I was just talking to one of my colleagues a couple days ago going, how come these agents aren't showing homes? And she goes, well, most of them have jobs because they can't make it in real estate. That's one issue. Or they're driving them to the builders that are giving away large commission to the agent. They're making it easy for the buyer to walk in. They're offering as much as $50,000 in incentives to the buyer to buy their homes versus existing homes. So it's extremely competitive right now, more than I've seen in a long time. So when we come back, my name is Barb Schlinker. I'm the broker owner of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty and the host of the show. We're going to be talking about some steps that you can do to sell in any market. And if you are thinking of making a move, give us a call, 719-301-3900. We have lots of buyers in our database of buyers in waiting. Typically, we can match over 1,000 buyers to any home. And all you have to do is give us a call, 719-301-3900, or go to barbhasthebuyers.com. Richard?
Barb, we're discussing the Fed's recent increase on the Fed borrowing rate and whether or not it has an effect on the housing market. So, what should home sellers expect and do in a market situation like this one?
Well, in this situation where you've got more inventory to compete with, you have to look at your competition. You can't just look backwards at other sales and go, oh, that one sold for this amount, so therefore my home should sell for this amount. You've got to look at what's in front of you, because that's what all the buyers are looking at. They're looking at what is their current competition, what can they get in their price range, and you just have to be the best available solution for the buyers on the market. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be remodeled. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be pretty. The key there is it has to be affordable and priced right. What's different now is don't expect bidding wars. That doesn't happen very often right now because there's fewer buyers to compete with. And the online presentation is absolutely critical. If you don't impress them online, if 100% of home buyers are searching online, they're going to eliminate most of those homes. So it has to be marketed correctly, both with price and presentation. And we know how to help you do that. So if you are thinking of making a move, give us a call, 719-301-3900, or go to barbhasthebuyers.com. Richard?
You're listening to Your Real Estate Voice with Barb Schlinker of Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. And if you are thinking of making a move, call Barb at 719-301-3900 or visit barbhasthebuyers.com. When we come back, we'll be discussing what increases home value when you're selling your Colorado home. Barb has that answer when we come back.